See, that's why you need that TV.
Gotta turn that.
Time is 7 o'clock. I call the school committee meeting to order. First item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item on the agenda is citizens forum. Discussions or comments regarding individuals should be avoided so as not to violate an individual's right. This is the time, if anyone wants to speak, come on down. Do you mind, others won't be able to hear unless you're near a microphone. It just is, we all get over the camera thing eventually, but the microphone piece is.
I just have actually three things. The first one is, it's come to my knowledge that the advisor for the National Honor Society has stepped down. And I'm not sure if we have, or when will we have, a new advisor. That's question number one.
Okay.
The next thing I have is, as a parent of a high schooler and an upcoming high schooler, my concern is the decline of the students leaving Sutton in the high school. Why is that? I know that we lose a lot of students freshman year due to private high schools, vocational, whatever, but they seem to be continually leaving, sophomore, junior, and I don't know why. I know we get some students that come in school choice, which is great. However, of those school choice students, how many of them actually continue and graduate from Sutton? That was
Okay.
just something that I've never seen it, so I don't know. Maybe I just don't know.
Sure, I get that.
And the other thing that I think you're addressing tonight is the independent study. And my question on that was, who decides who gets independent study? We've had this conversation, I know, last year, but how come some kids get it, some kids don't? I know you tried to explain it to me last year, and I'm still having a hard time understanding it, because is it for the convenience of the faculty or the best interest of the student? Because
Right.
I know some kids are getting independent study.
So let me see if I can, 1, 2, 3. That's three, yeah?
That's it.
Oh, that's good. Let me go backwards, I think. First, on the independent study, you're right, we're going to get some information today, I think. And we'll all learn a little bit there. So hopefully we can get that very question either addressed, or we'll get a report back and they'll say, boy, I really haven't discussed, so I don't know where that's going to go, but it will show up today. And it's a
Okay.
good question to ask around. So we'll do it there, if that works. On the NHS advisor, I guess I'd ask either you or Ted if there's a nice quick answer. Otherwise, if you got to look into it, for sure I want to know. But the question there really was you're hearing that the advisor had stepped down, and is there another advisor that's
Yeah,
stepping
I don't know if anybody's been appointed yet. I'm not sure. I don't think so, but maybe I just haven't heard. I don't know.
So-
Do we have an update yet?
We do not have an advisor at this time.
So,
Well, we have a solution, but not an advisor. I can
Okay.
talk about that one. Get off there.
okay. And then the second one that I was bringing up, that's the number of students, and then our school choice students graduating, the ones that are coming in.
Right.
The decline piece, my suspicion, I saved this one to last, and Ted, if you can speak to it, great, but otherwise, I really, that's one that it'd be nice, easy to see numbers, right? If we're seeing them drop out at different times, and I would surely like to see that also, but if it's going to take you time to really have valid data.
I can just tell you, though, 2 of the last 3 years, we had a very, very large acceptance at BVT. And so those greatly affected student population. As far as private schools, it's always the same.
And
Just
are
a
you
few.
Seeing any increase or the numbers who are leaving sophomore, junior, senior year?
I'd have to look at that. I don't know. And again, I don't know if there's a lot, but I don't have that data.
So
I
that I think is the bigger piece, and is an interesting question. If there's students who are starting their high school and then choosing, after they've started to go to a different choice, but
Yeah, I don't see that really being an issue, but I'd be curious. I'll look at the numbers and see what happens.
Yeah,
And
if the
again-
numbers are, we've seen 2 this year, and that's the first 2 in a long time, or if there's always been 2 or
But
3.
the biggest issue is BVT. 2 out of the last 3 years, over 35 kids accepted to BVT. They went to BVT, and this year it's about 30% of the freshman class. So that's a significant
To my knowledge.
hit on the population.
To my knowledge, and again, it has to be checked out, but to my knowledge, last year and this year, some of the high schoolers, sophomore, juniors, had left not for BVT, but for school choice schools and private schools. And that to me is a concern.
One thing we had done, and I don't know we've done it in a few years, but tried to sort out are there ways to see if there's somebody leaving?
We have all that data.
Right.
So we do a school reporting report. Di's doing it right now. We know exactly where all students go. So it's data that's available to us. So we could tell you exactly how many kids leave the district, what districts they go to. We have all that data available.
And where you can, if you know why they chose, right? If it was our soccer team just isn't good enough and they wanted to go to see how I've made somebody else angry at me now. But that one feels like we're going to have to get real data. It's a reasonable conversation. The NHS and the can't even read my own damn
Independent study.
Independent
Yeah, the independent study we hear today.
Well,
Okay.
it's with the school council.
It's with
So
the
I don't
school
know-
council.
I don't know
I'm
where it
sorry,
is right
I thought
now,
there was
but-
going to be an update today. Still
Well,
with
you have the
council.
update. I don't know if the update's,
But that also implies there won't be anything final even today around if there's suggestions around how to implement or change independent study right now, if it's still with school council, but we'll hear some pieces. Yeah? I get you 2 answers, or as much as I can today, and a third answer at the next meeting. You can have the other data for us, Ted?
I'll get the attendance issue for the next meeting.
Cool. That's what I can do today.
Thank you.
Others? Next item's the consent agenda. This is the minutes of October 2nd, as well as build schedules, October 4, 12, and 19. For a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Is there discussions, questions on,
Yeah, I'm just going to point out again, we've got a $14 bill for the middle school sign. The meter is not even on.
So it trickles out there. So there is electricity going out there.
So shouldn't the meter run then? The meter's not on.
I don't know,
when you say the meter's not on, is it physically not there?
It's there, but there's no display to it, and the wheel is not going around.
yeah, so the information I got when I looked into this was that there is, it's just a current. It's just a current that's going through that's $14 a month, a current going
That's
through.
$14 a month. Do we not have a kill switch? Cannot somebody come and clip the line? I'll come clip the line.
We don't want to clip the line because we want electricity
Well-
going to the sign, but I'll talk to Roger to
Yeah,
see if
but,
there's any
I mean-
way that we can,
It's leaking, if you want to call it
Disconnect,
that, which
yeah.
is,
I'll have
got a
Roger.
few choice words for that. So, yeah, if we could get that corrected, that'd be good, because $14 is $14.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I just,
Sorry. Has anybody got anything other than $14?
but it's important. I
hear you.
know.
I hear you.
Any place, you know.
I
hear you.
will say, though, that the fact that the building's not lit up like a Christmas tree tonight was a very good.
Which is a plus, but can I just want to add one more
I'm
thing?
sorry.
The library is on 24/7. Sorry, Roger.
He'll be here next.
I
next meeting.
offered to come tie up some hydrangeas and stuff. He said he might take me up on it.
Okay.
Might save you some money there.
Any other questions
Sorry.
on the bill schedule or the minutes? All in favor?
Aye.
Carries 5-0.
It's $14 times 12 months. And it was $10.59 last month, so,
So it's not 14.
no, it was 14 this month, though.
This month.
14.69.
It's getting colder out. Can you please give us an athletics update? It's all right. Oh, it's,
All right.
Hello.
Hi.
How are you guys doing?
Good, you?
Good. I have a fall update for you and kind of an overview. So right now, postseason and tournament play. We have a week left of regular season. Our girls soccer, field hockey, and volleyball teams so far have qualified. Golf competes tomorrow in district play. And we still have a week and a half of regular season play to go. All games and updates are on the MIAA website, miaa.net, and then there's a helpful app as well for your phones to get updates and notifications if you favorite certain teams. This Saturday, Sutton is hosting the Dual Valley Conference Cross Country Championship meet with over 300 runners from 6 schools. And the race is a staggered start beginning at 10 a.m. through 12:30 p.m. All parking will be at the high school. So if you're wanting to go to see the DVC Cross Country Championship, parking will be at the high school and we'll have a shuttle going back and forth. Let's see, winter. I'm going to go to winter first, then go back to fall. For winter, registration will begin next week, November 1st, and the season will begin November 27th, which is the Monday after Thanksgiving. Basketball and cheer and indoor track and field schedules will be on the MIA site. Right now, basketball is already up there. Indoor track and field schedules will be on the MIA site by next week. And you can favorite those teams so you can get notifications of any game changes. Athletic department overview. Our sports for fall 2017, we had over 270 student athletes, grades 6 through 12, and that is just down by 6 from last year. Last year we had 276, bless you. This year 270. New to 2017 is fall cheer, so thank you for approving that. We have 10 athletes at home football games, representing Sutton at 3 local competitions in the next couple of weeks. So the fall cheer team is up and running, and they're really excited to be a part of our fall season. Middle school involvement, we have fall cross country for middle school only, and we have JV participation for girls and boys soccer, field hockey, and then in the spring we have softball and outdoor track and field for middle school. So I wanted to give you those updates that we do have a lot of middle schoolers. I think we're up to about 63 middle schoolers in the fall right now participating with us, so it's great. For field updates, field availability and conditions, we're being proactive with our limited space for teams and have met with a few different groundskeepers from local schools to get some thoughts on what we have and how to utilize it and keep ahead of it. So for fall, our space is limited because we have so many teams, but our soccer teams do practice at Memorial Fields. The Sutton Youth Soccer invited me to their board meeting this past September, so I was able to work with them to create a rental agreement to use their fields, and we're looking to add that to the FY19 budget because we use them every day for over 2 to 3 hours, and then sometimes for games when we have fields that are being used for other events. Our football is practicing at the high school again this year, and we're looking into possibly aerating that field to make it a usable game site for soccer and or field hockey. So that's something that Roger, Mr. Raymond, and I are working on for the future. Some of our solutions were slice seeding using organic fertilizer and meeting with some local schools to analyze what we have going and what we can do to make that make our fields a little more, I guess, user-friendly. For the spring, our baseball field was updated, new pitcher's mound and infield, and this spring we're looking for the softball infield to be updated. It's a little rough out there, and then we still don't have a track, but we're looking into that. Some initiatives, we do have 7 AEDs belonging to the athletic department, and I looked into a system, life support systems. They come in twice a year now to look through all of our AEDs, make sure that the batteries, the pads, they give us a little first aid kit to go with each AED, are all up to date, and that if they're ever used, they replace everything as well. So it's a company that will come in and make sure that they're all up to date.
How much does that run?
It is about $230 per unit that they come in.
So can we train somebody in-house to do that?
We still have to buy the product,
Right.
and sometimes batteries do run about $500 a piece.
Right, but batteries shouldn't be replaced that often, and,
Right.
and the unit's pretty good about signaling you when it's a low unit.
I can ask them if they have any training.
Yeah,
Yeah.
AED training's not hard, so there's got to be something out there.
Okay.
Could it probably even talk to the fire department? Rescue.
Okay. I'll see what I can do. Thank you for that. And our athletic trainers, we did, after last year, started adding athletic trainers to some of our events that had some injury reports, and our students are coming back and saying they really appreciate having the athletic trainers there. They meet with them prior to events if they've had previous injuries, or just to talk to them about maybe when they come off the field, they had a pull or they're not sure, and the athletic trainer will assess them and help them out, and sometimes help with just something as simple as a blister. So I think that it's helpful for them to be out on the field and helping them. We've had a lot of kids go down, athletic trainers there, assesses the situation, can assess for concussions if necessary, and either let the student continue to play if they're fine, or take them off.
And what have we spent on athletic trainers?
I have it by sport. We've spent them, and we did replace using EMTs or full ambulances for football with athletic trainers, which saves us. To have an EMT costs us about 32 times 4 hours, and an athletic trainer is 42 for 2 hours. So it's a little bit of a savings. I can get you the exact number though.
Please.
Okay. Just write myself a note. I'm working on my budget this week, so I'll have all that. Conferences, meaning Dual Valley Conference, held our first leadership workshop October 23rd at Nipmuc. We had a low ropes course for student leaders, student athletes. A speaker, Adam Greenberg from Franklin baseball. He was a former Franklin baseball player who was injured during his first at-bat in the major leagues. Came in to speak to our student athletes about perseverance. It was very educational. And our students also learned how to operate an AED. We feel like we have 7 AEDs out there. We want the students to know what they are. And sometimes they're in this big foreboding black case, and we want them to know what they need to do to bring it to the field to help somebody if they need it. So we train them on how to operate an AED and some basic first aid. Hoping to offer the workshop again, either preseason in the spring or next year in the fall again. And so that's what we got going on in the athletic department.
Great.
Questions?
I had one question from a middle schooler today. Are they allowed to use the weight room over the winter?
Right now, we do have the weight room for high school only.
Okay.
But it could be something we look into, maybe if we had a weight room training that they went through.
And I think I was being asked because I don't know if there's a lot for middle schoolers come the winter session. And I think that was the reason was you have, as you said, there's a lot of involvement in track and a couple
Right.
others. And I think there's probably a treadmill or two in the weight room, right?
There are.
Okay.
So the middle schoolers are using the weight room now, but
They-
not in the winter?
No, they're not. They're not right now. We do have in the winter limited space in the weight room after school because the indoor track team does utilize it. But it's something that we could look into to see about middle schoolers using
Yeah,
the weight
and
room.
the answer might just be no. That's
As of
it
right
is what
now,
it
it
is.
is no.
Yeah,
We've just kind of
that's-
left it blanket because there's not a lot of space. But it's something if a student wanted to and they came to me, we could work something out if possible.
Okay.
How does the weight room operate? Is there someone there every day after school?
Every day after school in each season, fall, winter, and spring, we have somebody from about 2:15, depending on if they have extra help, to about 3:30.
Okay.
Great.
Is it 5?
If there's staff meetings that they have to attend, they need, it's usually a teacher or a person in the school district that might not be able to work on certain Mondays, but usually it's 5 days a week.
Is there, one more, is there anything being done on the, to address the Clover situation in the baseball field?
Oh, Clover. We actually did talk about Clover this summer, and we're not sure what to do about the Clover. We've heard different stories where Clover is a good thing and Clover is not a good thing, so I'm working with Mr. Raymond. So I know he's presenting next week, maybe?
Yeah, Roger's coming to the next
Okay.
meeting.
I think you just pawn that one off on Roger.
Roger's busy doing some high-tech gardening when he's on this week.
Yeah, clipping those low maintenance bushes.
Roger would like the challenge of Clover,
Yeah.
I can assure you.
Injuries, where are we looking compared to prior years?
I don't have the exact numbers from last year compared to this year, but we do have a good number of injuries. Some of them from sprained ankles that get cleared the next day, to some head injuries that have happened and been assessed off-site at their own doctors. We've had a couple of students leave via ambulance, but because of either a broken wrist. So we've had quite a few this season. I don't have the exact numbers on that.
I think that report-wise, and having a report on an injury that happened yesterday is not, but looking at it over time, what we're seeing in different sports
Sure.
and where,
I still have mine from last year. I can
Tied
look at
in.
the dates.
even if it's at the end of the year, just so that we're.
Yeah, and it obviously has to be very broad and just statistical.
Yeah.
Do we have any issues with numbers for sports? I mean, are most teams holding up pretty well?
Yeah. Right now, all of our teams, I know for girls soccer and field hockey, the teams are full. We're doing a pretty good job keeping up the numbers. I think that we did open up girls soccer to 7th grade as well, and that helped the numbers quite a bit. Our field hockey program, because it's 7th and 8th grade as well, it thrives. I think having the middle school involvement is helping our JV program and then also helping our varsity in the long run.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Middle and high school updates. We should find a principal or two.
Should come up together.
Well, you can sit together.
Wait, is something wrong? You can't sit with Ted?
They're all pretty sketchy.
It's not exactly. Okay, I'll go first. It doesn't matter, since we'll both appear at the same time. That's okay. So first, I can just address a couple of the questions that were raised earlier. As far as National Honor Society advisor, we still do not have an advisor. I think we're coming close to a solution, but I would want to share that solution with the kids before I made it public to the community. So I think we're getting close, but that's kind of where we stand on National Honor Society advisor. As for the question about dropout / kids leaving, I happen to have that information just because we're doing our NEASC study. So just when you thought NEASC couldn't provide any useful information, we have a 1% dropout rate and we have a 95% graduation rate. So what that tells me is there's about 4 kids a year leaving Sutton for another district.
If a student was choiced in and chose to go back to the sending district, would that show up as a dropout, or was that just a transfer?
If they were from Millbury and then went back to Millbury,
Yeah,
that wouldn't be a dropout.
that'd be just a
Because
transfer.
if a student says they're leaving the high school and declares where they're going to go and then registers in another school, then that's not a dropout for us. If they leave the high school and then they say, yeah, we'll get back to you, at some point they then become a dropout. And we do our part. We're talking to families, do you need any help connecting with a GED program? It's called the HiSET now. So we do that work with them. So those are the numbers that we just happen to have. And the 1% number is on the DESE website as far as the dropout rate.
So the 1% is kids that that we don't have
don't-
tracking on?
The 1% are the kids who leave school and then just don't do anything, as far as we know. Like, for example, like if you dropped out of school or you just left, I should rephrase that. If you left Sutton High School and then never got back to us with what happened, that's a dropout. Unless you register with another school, then the state magically, fixes that number.
So then the new number would be a transfer. So if somebody left and went to the Math and Science Academy or Worcester Academy or something like that, that's a transfer.
That doesn't affect our numbers, correct.
And I think what we want to do is if we can come back with students who transferred out or went somewhere else in the sophomore, junior, senior year, and as important, I suspect, is if we see a trend or if we see numbers where they've started the year and come October, November say, you know what, I've decided to go to XYZ.
Yeah, on students who are still residents of the town, obviously, yeah.
I guess I'm just interested, right? If we have somebody who's a sophomore or junior who we think they're going to be there, and then for whatever reason they say, no, I've decided to go back to Millbury, or I'm found an opening in. If it's, I was waitlist for my first choice and I got in, be good to know. If it was, this doesn't fit for me, it'd be good to be able to say, well, we're getting somewhere the fit isn't right. What do we do?
Sure.
I think that was the other part of the question is,
is why are kids
Yeah.
leaving? Not kids to go to BVT or kids who going into the freshman year go to St. John's or Holy Name or Notre Dame, but kids who after the freshman year leave the district and go to a different school. Why? I think that was
yeah.
your question, correct?
And for that, what I want to make sure we have is actual numbers, right? If we can look at a couple of years and know that.
We get that number.
Right.
Every year, because you have to track where every kid goes. You just can't fall off the face of the earth. We have to track every single student that is in this town that's of school age. And so there's a report done every year. We're getting that data now. So we'll be able to tell you, 4 kids left sophomore year, 3 moved to Northbridge because their family moved, and 1 went whatever. We have all that information.
Independent studies. So I brought the issue to our school council in September. And in general, there was a consensus in the school council that they don't see the need to expand the independent study program. A couple things they brought up. The concern that if it becomes, more widespread than it currently is, that it becomes an unmanageable process. So just as a reminder for anyone who wants an independent study, you need to contract that with an individual teacher, and the individual teacher has to be willing to take you on. So that's part of the independent study process. So beyond you need to be an independent worker, your grades need to be on point, you have to be sort of a good citizen in the school, you also need to find a teacher who's willing to do the work with you. So if all of a sudden we had, 27 students who wanted to be Deb O'Neill's lab assistant, that's not going to fly, right? Because she can only manage so much. So that was a concern that was raised. There's also, just as a reminder, that teachers don't get paid for independent study work. So the mentoring and the work that they do with those students, which is theoretically supposed to supplement the course, is just all out of their goodwill. So that's why it can't be seen as, it would be unfair, I think, to the teaching staff to push this as a more widely spread program, because now all of a sudden, beyond their contractually obligated teaching load, now they're taking on 5, 6, 7 other kids and 5, 6, 7 other content areas or subjects that they're just doing for free. There was also a talk that there are some classes that are just better designed for independent studies than others, and some experiences that we can provide at the high school or in the district that are better designed for independent studies than others. So, for example, the kids who work in the Future Teachers program, that's considered an independent study program. They have a mentor, Mr. Zook. They meet with Mr. Zook, but then they do that work every day, because we just are lucky that they can just walk down the hall and go work in the elementary school. So that's obviously an ideal design. The more ornate, intricate the independent study you're looking to set up, then the more challenging it becomes to have all that happen and to have a teacher who's already teaching their typical load manage that. So that was another thing to decide. And then basically what the last thing that was said was, this all comes down to budget. So if we want kids to have more opportunities, then we obviously the only way to really do that is to have more staff teachers, have more staff. So if we had one additional, I know this will never happen, but if we had one additional teacher in every content area, then we can provide all sorts of electives that we can't currently provide. So that was where the council landed on it.
Can I say something? That to me sounds off topic from where I thought this was going.
I agree.
I thought that what we were doing was looking at kids who couldn't get into a specific class and could then take that class during an SPP time where they could do the work for that class. So there is no new class. It's just that they're doing independent study for a pre-existing class. So to me, I don't really see much more workload, if any, to the teacher. They'll have one extra test to correct of a person that isn't necessarily that isn't going to be in that class every day. But the child, I thought, was then going to be self-directed, and if they needed help, would then be able to go see that teacher on the help days and say, I don't understand this, or I don't get this. That was my impression. It wasn't that we were adding new independent studies during the school day. I thought it was we were working with classes we already had.
Well, I think both can be true, right?
Yeah.
So future teachers is a class that we don't offer as it's not biology, right? But that is an independent study.
Right, but it's pre-existing, and that's
Sure.
where I thought we were working with things, was
Yeah, I think maybe the misunderstanding is just that we're not set up for online learning. We're not set up for to replicate everything that happens in a given class in a different time every day. So I was I observed the teacher today in an English class, just as for an example. She had a prompt at the start of the class. She had a video clip that was shared. She had a brainstorming activity that she had the kids do. She had the kids journal, turn and talk to a partner about that journal. I'm sure I'm forgetting something. That was all in the scope of one class. For her to write that lesson plan out, get the video clip, send it all to a kid, and have that kid replicate that every day is not reasonable in my estimation, particularly when we're talking about kids who are choosing one thing over another. So it's not, if there's an instance where, and this doesn't typically happen with Sutton students, kids have to take a class for graduation. And we're able to get almost all of those kids. I can't even think of a kid who we've said, boy, one of your graduation requirements, we're not going to be able to sneak that in throughout the course of the 4 years. If it's the decision between I want to be in AP Bio and I want to be in Art 3, or I want to be in AP Human Geography if I'm a ninth grader, and I want to be in graphic design because I'm really interested in graphic design. At some point, we just have to let kids know there are choices, and you have to pick which one of those you prefer. And then, more often than not, you can take the class that you didn't take going forward. So I think that's where we landed with that. I just don't think that if we
I'm
were
just not comfortable with that.
Okay.
I just,
I have to agree. We have curriculums that are written for classes.
curriculum
Yes.
is not lesson plans though.
Okay. We have kids working on independent study. These are kids who are willing to take on the work on their, in addition to what they have. I agree, not every class can be set up this way, but I think there are certain classes that can be done this way, and I think we're doing the kids a disservice by not allowing students to have this. I don't understand how we can, you made the comment to this committee when we talked about the last time about picking and choosing which ones, and yet it appears that that's what we're doing. We're not opening this up to everybody. We're picking and choosing the ones that we allow to happen. I have a big issue with that. I think that I disagree with the comment about teachers not getting paid for it. If there are lesson plans that are written and there are certain classes that qualify and the kids are going to do this on their SPP and the teachers by contract have to be here 2 days for after work, after school help, that's when the students go and can do this. 1 or 2 students, I don't see how that's going to upset the apple cart. I don't think the questions are being answered. I don't think it's being pushed hard enough.
Can I say something or no?
Actually, it's going to keep progressing here at this point, and I'm pretty comfortable with that right now, and that we've, I think, representing a couple of sides to this fairly well. Yeah. No.
I mean, I work at the pleasure of the superintendent. I'm happy to do anything that Ted tells me to do. I'm happy to bring it back to school council, but from where I sit, you're looking at a union issue first and foremost, because you're going to be telling people that if a kid says, hey, I want to do an independent study in journalism, you have to do it. And I think that's going to violate contract. So I think that's a deal breaker just on that point. And then I also don't want to get to a point where if we're starting to force things on people, then that we shut it down entirely. And now teachers become reticent to do anything because they feel like they're under the gun. I just don't agree. So we might just agree to disagree. But again, if Ted tells me to do something, I'm happy to turn in another direction.
I'd like to understand what classes we do today allow, or how we make the choices to let somebody do an independent study, what those classes are, what those classes would not be. I'm also a little curious in that, and I think it's a little early, but I thought it was going to come back, and so hopefully it's still progressing, but that there would be some recommendations or suggestions or report back around, have we found any way to communicate even more to 8th graders, 9th graders, that you may very well be, when you make this choice, setting yourself up for decisions that are that you'll see the impact of your junior or senior year. And I think when we talked about it before it was being communicated, I seem to recall just saying, are there any things that we can do to make that any clearer? A little different, but just in areas of discussion still open.
Yeah, and I thought this was, my impression too is, I can't see it becoming full-blown because it would require more of the student, and that to me just doesn't seem like it's gonna be something that the entire high school goes, oh, that I wanna do. There are gonna be tons of kids who do not wanna take on that additional work, but there will be a select few who do want to do that, and I don't know, I
So-
want them to have a passion for learning. That's my big thing. So how do you balance
And
all
with our,
this?
I mean, I think within our system, we're equipped to handle that. I agree with Kristen, I don't think the numbers are gonna be that big. I think it's gonna be student-driven, and I think it's gonna be student-driven by driven students. Kids who wanna do this, and kids who are willing to go above and beyond. And, I don't know, I'm really disappointed to hear that, that we have, teachers that aren't willing to.
Hold on, wait a minute. So there's a difference here. This went to the school council. So the school council is made up of parents, students. It's not teachers. So this was discussed there. It was brought up to the union. It went to the school council, where you have a makeup of a variety of constituents. So what I would say here tonight is, if you want to look further at this, I think there needs to be a study committee by the school committee, having a subcommittee of the school committee that works and negotiates or meets with members of the faculty, with the union, and to talk about further what specifically the school committee is discussing, or members of the school committee would like to explore further. You use a school council to vet things like this because you have representation of parents and students and everybody involved. That's why you have that. If the committee, the school committee, who I represent, would like to look further, you would like to explore this, because there's a lot to it. So first of all, what would those courses be? I think you'd have to spend a great deal of time in a committee talking about, well, what courses that are currently constituted under our program of studies that we could possibly do where kids could choose, I'm going to do this independently and that. There are contractual issues. You have a union. You have to bring them into the discussion. So I would take this a different avenue. If the school committee would like us to take this a different avenue, and that's who I work for. So, but I would say we need to put together a study group made up of 2 members of the school committee and faculty members of the union to further look at this and define what we can and cannot do with independent studies and possibly with, and again, we'd want to make sure that if we did something like this, it's manageable. That we can do it with the current construct of our high school.
But this is also something for us to think about as we
Sorry.
move.
You were going to ask a question.
I'm sorry.
right?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
I'm sorry, Nick. I'm sorry. I didn't mean. But that could also go along to the fact of, for so long as a school, we plan for the here and now. We've got to look at, where do we want to be 3 years from now? Where do we want to be 5 years from now? Where's education going? Education has evolved significantly in the, 10, 15 years that I've been doing graduate education. It's evolved significantly, and the ways people go about learning has multiplied. So I think it's important to look at, because at some point this may be a reality, and it might need to be a reality sooner rather than later. But if we don't look at it and we don't anticipate, you're not,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's a great point, and I think what you said is, I think we probably do need a subcommittee to look at this, because it's going to take a lot of work. And ultimately, in my view, you're right, things change, but I think we're going to have to invest more. Budgetarily, we're going to have to change. We're going to have to invest more. Much like Ted said, we have a certain amount of teachers. We do run into contractual issues. And I understand, like I see the passion from you guys. I wish I had more of a front row seat on this one. My exposure has been limited, and I was not one of those students looking for more. So,
that's
you know,
okay.
and I look at that and I wonder, is it something where, you know, we get to the end of it, you do investigatory, and you find out maybe the approach is we do more seats in virtual high school. I don't know what it is, but something to that effect.
but we
Or
come
maybe
to
we
it-
do find a situation, we find it. But
I
if we
think
get a committee,
That's important. is-
that's the good thing, is you can dive into it, and then hopefully we'll get a good answer that at least we can answer to our public and say, this is what we found, this is what we can think we do, or it's gonna take this much more money. And that's where the investment goes.
But then, again, it gives you a good idea of
Yep. Mm-hmm.
where are we going? Where's our education going? And then we've got a budget that we need to match where we want to go, which I think is hugely important as we move forward.
So I think that'd be great if we put together a subcommittee, because this is gonna take more than the high school update tonight.
Yeah, and Kristen, just to echo you, I couldn't agree with you more. Like, I think everything has changed. You know, we have the school that the kids go to now should not look the way that it currently does. We're still using the same model that we've been using for 100+ years. So what my job is to try to move us forward in the most progressive way possible, given the constraints of what we have, in a way that's also going to land with the population in the building that we have. Because I can have all the great ideas in the world, but if no one's buying it, then it doesn't really matter. So I think if more virtual high school seats, that's great. A teacher dedicated just to do this kind of learning with kids or to facilitate this, you know, there's all sorts of ways to do it. I'm just saying, given what we do now, it seems unfair to me to say, hey, I know you're teaching 3 sections of biology and 2 sections of environmental science. These 5 kids want to do it, because I know you guys say that it's only 1 or 2, and currently it is 1 or 2, and we are providing this on a very limited basis for very limited kids. But the minute it becomes just another option, well, now it's not just 1 or 2, now it's 5, 6, or 7.
Right, and that's why I'm saying
which might be
having that
fine.
planning,
Sure.
if we know we're evolving, then we can have a budget that hopefully evolves with it.
And
that's huge.
And just to, we should probably wrap it up, but I agree.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, Jay.
I agree with you, but I can just tell you that we don't have a lot of kids burning down the door for independent study. So I feel like I worry a little bit that this is a problem or a solution looking for a problem. But in general, I agree with you that this is where the field's heading anyway, and we need to find a way to sort of begin that
Prepare them
process.
for college, this is just another way to
There are
support
schools that have students must take 1 online course before they graduate. You know, I know there are high schools out there that do that.
So something that I think we could be looking at is how many independent studies or what independent studies we're offering, having a little bit better explanation around how you're making the choices around what independent studies to offer. We can do it as a subcommittee if you like. I think it's going to be a long discussion afterwards.
I would just ask that we could be patient with the subcommittee since we're right in the middle of NEASC, which I'll get to my update because I know Jerry wants me to go.
We'll get there, I promise,
So,
but I'm going to
that's
make sure
taking
we
a little bit of time at
give
this
it a
point.
little bit of time. That would be part of my concern, is there is some information without calling a subcommittee of the school board that we could be pulling together on this. And I think that's been the intention, was to collect feedback to understand. If you think you're far enough along in that and you have a pretty good description of how we're doing independent studies now, then great, we get a couple of folks who have some energy to take it the next step.
I think this conversation was a little bit different than just independent study. So I think that, in my opinion, there are 2 school committee members that are very interested in pursuing this. And so that's a good thing.
It's a good thing. It's 2 out of 5, so I'll put together a subcommittee. I will tell you, it won't be the 2, it'll be one of the 2 that are most interested. Because if it's only 2 that are interested in moving any further, then we've given this as much time as it's going. If there are 3, then it needs more time. And Nate has some extra time to spend.
Told you I was one of the smart kids.
What I don't want to do is have a subcommittee get together and their first meeting be, we really need an education on how you're choosing what you're doing today. There's some data. I think you guys have put an awful lot of intelligence on how to make it work, but we've run into a couple of bumps where we say, rats, there's a case that just didn't work? Do we understand that there are going to be those cases, what it would cost to cover those cases? Is it really just not feasible for the types of classes that we're looking at? Or is this something that we really need to be thinking about from a budget perspective? With budget applied there, we could do other pieces. And if you're saying you guys are ready,
I would remind the committee that we've done a lot of things. I mean, we've got an amazing internship program now that 2 years ago had 20 kids, and now 3/4 of the, we set up a specialized program for kids that unfortunately probably would have worked out better. So there are we have lots of little pockets of things happening all over the
the
place.
reward for great work is questions around, can we do something different?
Right.
And more. So, congratulations.
So
It really is. No, congratulations.
Are
It's
you-
great. There's opportunity to do something different, or at least explore.
So are you asking us to, what type of data would you be seeking from
I
high
think
school?
there's support for the subcommittee to get together to talk about it. I'm just suggesting that before the subcommittee get together, there's a collection of data that is what we've done for independent studies, how we've chosen to, some of the questions that we've asked a couple of times, right? Some have already been answered and you've gotten feedback from the council. If that's all ready to go and we have a couple of members who are willing and able and energetic, I think that helps bring some energy to it.
So you said before a subcommittee's formed. So were you saying that you would like us to come and present the data to the full board
I'm
first?
looking for you to say there's no problem, we have that ready.
We have
in the
that
next
ready.
couple of weeks. Yeah.
That's easy.
Could I interrupt to the chair? And Mr. McCarthy, one of the questions that Mr. Brennan's asked me a number of times is when you meet with 8th graders and you prepare them to come into the high school, you talk about these issues with them, correct? With, when you get to the high school, making a schedule out, planning out your 4 years.
Yep. We do that in the, the first sort of assembly that we have with the 8th graders when they're making their way to the high school. Then when they have a draft schedule, when they've signed up for their courses, then the guidance counselors will actually call them in and, we show them their schedules. That's typically happens toward the end of the year. Could we be even more clear than we already are with saying, hey, just so you guys know, there are occasions that 5% of you may not get the course that you want because you also want another course that's a singleton. I mean, some of this is just above the 8th grade mind at that point. They're worried about who they're sitting next to at lunch and do they have the teacher that they think they wanted to get. They're not worried about when I'm in AP Bio and in AP Physics and in AP Language. Well, I'll be able to take all three of them at once. So I think we could do a better job at saying that part of high school is mapping your career out. And that's why we have Lindsay and Erin, and they do a great job with that. And they problem shoot very well. So we can double down on that. I'll make a note and remind the kids of that.
And for me, it wasn't feedback on try harder. I
know. I didn't take it that way. I didn't take it that way.
It's, are there other ways, or so can we communicate the same notion in a different fashion also, and maybe it sinks in a little better.
I think
Side.
maybe what we could do is, when we have the 8th grade night for the parents, we could go a little harder. But at the same time, selfishly, as someone who's responsible for the kids in the building, like I don't want to give parents the impression that, boy, you might not get what you want with that to a whole 100 parents when that's going to affect 5 of them. So.
What about the 5 that it affects, though?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Right.
It's
So
hard.
that's fine, and I understand that, and that's why we do mention it. But I don't want to make it seem like when we say like the kids are leaving the building. Well, the kids are not leaving the building. 3 kids are leaving the building. So I think perspective and proportionality when we're having these conversations matters. And so when I'm talking to the 8th grade parents, I can certainly say the benefit of Sutton High School is that we're a really small school and we know our kids really well. And in a small school setting, we were able to provide a lot of different things. The downside of a small school is we don't have 9 English teachers. We don't have 10 science teachers. And so some of those course offerings that you could get at a larger school are just not there. So we could do a better job at that. I'll take that point. But I also don't want to represent a problem that is not manifesting itself for 97% of the population.
Right, but it's true for that one that it affects, it's 100%.
Sure.
And just to add my own personal experience, so my son wanted to do band, and he chose band, but then instead of being able to take an honors math, took CP math. Let me that just doing that really changed how he even addressed senior year. And I don't know, I was frustrated because did he learn anything in CP math? Something. Did he put any effort into it? No. And so really what I'm seeing and what I think a bunch of people are saying is, I want my child to be challenged to the fullest. And could this be a reason why kids are going, oh, maybe I can go here because I can get all of the things that I want? I don't know. So maybe that feeds into kids going elsewhere. But when it happens to you, it's 100%, and it's a huge concern. And for my son, it wasn't a good thing. It wasn't a good thing. Because without the challenge, there was limited engagement. And that to me that's no good. I want him to have a passion for learning, and that kind of went down the tube. So there's the personal side of it, and that's kind of why I push this, because the kids should be passionate. God, I don't want to hear kids say, oh, I just kind of waded my way through high school doing the stuff I needed to do because in college I finally get to do what I want. Here's where we should be building that desire, and getting them to be interested in things and explore. And I just don't want to shut down kids. That's my concern. I don't want to shut them down. And so if they have opportunities in other places and go to other places, I'm going to see them, kids will go. So that perhaps leads to her question of why kids leave in the other grades.
I'd wait till we get the data before we
I know.
assume
No,
that people
yeah,
are leaving
I realize
for
I'm assuming,
reasons
but
that I don't
it
agree
becomes-
that's going to be the case when you see the data.
And that's fine, but I see that concern because senior year was a frustrating year for me. I saw huge changes, and I just think it's important because if it affects one, I think sometimes one is too many.
I agree 100% with you, and I'm afraid that I'm going to head down that path. I think there are more kids coming out of 8th grade than are given credit for thinking of how they're going to manage their high school years and what they want to learn and what they want to study. And it bothers me that we appear to be stifling that by not allowing kids to explore those avenues and develop the passion for learning that Kristen just explained. We're a small school, and that should be the ability for kids to do that should be a plus for us, not an impediment. It just, I'm not happy with the answers that I've heard. I think that there's an awful lot more that we could be doing, and I think that there are some kids in the school that are suffering because we're not offering this. So.
I don't think this is something we can't do. I think we're probably just limited by what we currently have. And this very, very well might come down to, after research is done, we need to hire another position or something like that. We're probably very much constrained by the budget, and, we all want to find ways to work around it, but we're doing a lot with what we have. We work with a schedule that works around band and, pieces everybody in just so, and we're trying to do the best with what we have. But we've also cut back a lot of positions over the years, and we try to make it work. And you get a kid that wants to take band or some other class, and then you have it line up where 1 or 2 kids line up for that. And that's tough to take a teacher and say, all right, we're going to have that teacher line up. Maybe we find a way for independent study to work, but we've got to do some research on that. I don't know if it's a motion, but I'd love to move on to the actual high school updates.
So we're close. We unfortunately have scratched the surface of this a couple of times, and I think it's worth a couple of minutes.
Mm-hmm.
If there's a couple of folks who want to volunteer to talk about, what I heard was sections around what really would be the standards, what would it cost if it's got a cost impact, what are we doing now, if you open it up, what kinds of classes do and do not lend themselves, has been pointed out multiple times. There very much would be a contractual impact that we'd have to look at. Those are kinds of things that I think we've been really close, but we've really never wrapped it all up, and nor was it meant to be tonight a presentation around.
Well, I think that's good to know. Where are we now? Where do we see education going, and how do we get there?
So to that end, eeny, meeny, miny, moe, either of you
Gladly.
buck up, and will
Rock,
either of
paper,
you
scissors.
join? And I'm looking for a little bit more even, and quite frankly, if
Yeah.
both of you are very frustrated by it, it is 2 out of 5, and that's where it would land. So if either of you two are willing to,
Sure.
Yeah, I think it's important that somebody looks into it. Does it have to be me? No.
can you start with Mr. Friend, because I think if we ever get to the update, Mr. McCarthy might say he's got a couple of minutes he's spending on NEASC the next
Yes.
couple of weeks. But
A little bit.
we said we want to look at this before we get into next year. We still have time, but I don't want to have the exact same conversation 4 months from now.
Agreed.
What else are you doing?
Okay, high school update. So as I mentioned, we are continuing with NEASC. We are rounding the home stretch. Our staff meeting today, the committees broke up into the 7 standards. We are currently in the process of collecting evidence, student work. One of the key things that comes out of the NEASC accreditation is, we identify what our areas of strength and what our areas for improvement. Going back to our last conversation, if I imagine that one of the areas that we would identify ourselves is that with a small staff, we're limited in the number of electives and offerings we can provide to kids. So that might be something that we recommend ourselves, and then maybe these two things tie together a little bit. And then again, going back to our last conversation, NEASC is going to come in March. They're going to write a report, and they're going to say, we recommend you do the following things. 14 years ago, they came and they said, we recommend you get a new building. And the community supported that recommendation. We have a new building. It's not going to be nearly as dramatic as a new building. But they're going to come back and they're going to say, we recommend you do the following things. And then it's going to be upon the people in this room to find a way to support that financially. Again, I'll go back to Kristen's point. I think she's 100% right with education is changing at a really rapid rate. And we're a little bit like the last people. Education's a little bit like the last people driving a buggy when everyone else is driving a car. But we also have to allow for that change to happen in a way that makes sense for the community. So we'll see what they come back with. But that's definitely going to be something that we'll probably have to wrap our minds around with fall of 2018. And we'll be looking at their report. And then as we head to budget season, okay, what things in the report require have a financial cost, and where do we need to offlay? So when we talk about these things, when Bruce was mentioning about kids planning their career, or Nate was talking about band, that runs into graduation requirements. Our graduation requirements jumble up in all of this. So that's just something to look forward to, but not until next year. MCAS results. We just got our MCAS results back. We're very excited about our math scores. Last year, we had 80% of our kids in average or proficient, and this year we are up to 86% in average proficient. That's a 7% higher than the state average. Christina Gamble in the math department did a lot of great work going back into the math curriculum, finding the areas that the kids have traditionally fallen down on. What they found out is that they were falling down on 7th or 8th grade standards that are being tested on the 10th grade test, which makes sense because the last time they had it, they were in the 7th and 8th grade. So we ended up doing a little 7th and 8th grade math review, box and whisker plots, if that makes any sense to anybody. So they did a lot of that, and the results bore fruit, and we're just going to double down on that again this year. They looked at the results this past week, and they're already planning on how they're going to go forward.
That sounds a little bit like the things that we didn't do well in an MCAS are the things that we'll review. But I got to believe there were other things that students learned in 7th or 8th grade that we don't do a review on. We don't have time. We're going on to 9th and 10th. And
Right, well, and they don't need it because the 8th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade team did a good job, and those are just like cemented in. I mean, if you ask, any 10th grader what they did in 9th and 7th grade math, they're going to struggle. But some of those concepts are repeated and spiral over time.
So I guess the question really is, do you think that the test identified areas that needed to be reinforced, or do you think that the areas that were reinforced just happened to be almost a random piece of what the test checked on that year?
I think that the areas that needed to be reinforced were relatively consistent over the past couple of years. And so I think they identified some gaps.
So that's a test that's doing something useful versus a test that we're having to teach to.
Yeah. We'll go with that. Keep my MCAS. I'll keep my MCAS
That's only
comments.
because we tired you out.
I'll keep my MCAS comments to myself. English, we were 92% last year. We're 93% this year. Science, we regressed this year. We were 77% last year. We're 69% this year. We have had a bit of turnover in the science department, as you guys are well aware. And we weren't able to hire a physics teacher until the day before school started last year. Certainly, we were playing catch up. So I feel like we're in a much better position this year, even though we still were in a position where we were waiting to decide or find out whether or not who was going to be the teacher in that position. But I think we're in better footing going forward for this year. AP results, we also got those back in July. I'll just keep updating the committee on this, but we're really now just in the maintenance phase of our AP program. The numbers speak for themselves. It's a pretty dramatic increase, whether it's the number of kids who are enrolled, the number of exams given, the number of kids who are scoring a 3 or higher. We believe that the AP program better prepares kids for college and better prepares them for what's going to be expected of them when they get out of Sutton High School. Going forward, we just need to continue the funding for this, and then the PD support for teachers is critical. I was talking to Sergio Marcucci today. He went to the AP training. He came back with this really great graphic of one of the main focus points of the PD offering was teaching kids to be media savvy. So just because it pops up on your Facebook feed or on your Twitter feed doesn't mean that it's necessarily news. And you had these great resources on what sources you could trust, whether it was right-leaning, whether it was left-leaning, whether it was evidence-based, whether it wasn't evidence-based, and giving kids that background knowledge as they enter the world. So that program just continues to reap benefits for us, and so we don't want to do anything but support it and let it grow. And then finally, on Friday, actually, was our first day in our work with the Anti-Defamation League. I think I mentioned that before. 32 of our students will be trained as peer leaders by the Anti-Defamation League staff. So they'll be trained specifically in non-bias, anti-prejudice work with the ultimate goal of going into the 9th grade classes and leading class discussions around race, privilege, and bias when the students read To Kill a Mockingbird. So it's a really nice tie-in with the actual curriculum, and then obviously a really nice tie-in to what's actually happening in the world around them. The benefits for us is I think that it really enriches the 9th grade program, English program, but it also gives kids, both the peer leaders and the students that they interact with at the cafeteria or in the baseball team or just wherever they are, when they see something, it gives them some skills where they can stand up. If they see something happening that's not right, it gives them some skills where they can combat that kind of thinking, that kind of behavior in a way that's more proactive. I'd rather give kids the skills where they can be proactive rather than be reactive, or worse yet, turn a blind eye when they see something like that that's happening. So we really feel like this kind of goes in with the kind of school that we want to provide for our kids, and we're really happy with the program. I'll keep you updated. Phil Fogelman, who's the New England director of ADL, is actually coming to the district learning team on Wednesday to present to that group. You guys are all really invited. It should be really informative, and I think he's got some great information and ideas for the team to take back to the individual schools, because we're at the point where the district learning team is working on a school basis to identify areas where we can shore up that end of our work, elementary through 12.
Mr. McCarthy, could you just repeat the date and time for that district learning for the public?
This Wednesday, 6 p.m., October 25th? 25th?
Yep.
And that'll be in the middle school team room.
Thank you.
Room for everybody who wants to attend.
Plenty of room.
Always gets good reviews.
Yep.
Ted provides most of the reviews, but
I like it. Kristen likes it too. Kristen
Yeah,
goes.
I've been-
She'll back me up on that.
No, it's-
Looking forward to it.
That's good. That's a great
You
idea.
went too.
other questions? You have a long ride. I appreciate.
Thank you.
We kept you for a while. It is so much better to have a difficult debate over something that I think impacts the kids. It's a good conversation.
Absolutely.
That we'll continue and raise blood pressure over, but get to something better.
But it gives us a plan for the future. That's huge.
Always positive.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right. So, in the middle school,
Hi, Jerry.
there.
Stars instead of diamonds.
So far, the year's going really well. Just to keep you updated, we hired Michael Keogh as our new science teacher. I scored Mrs. Lowe as an IA. I robbed her from the elementary school, which was great. So she's working upstairs in the middle school with us. A big thank you to Mr. Durgan. This summer, we created a new middle school lab in room 259 with 30 new computers for the middle school because we were really tight on computer space. Also, with a generous donation from the middle school PTO, we were able to get a portable laptop lab for the 8th grade team. So the technology that's been infused into the building is making things work a lot better. With the new cell phone policy, we don't see kids with a lot of phones on them, and it's been really working out well where the kids, if they need their phone for the period, they've been using the parking lots that we've set up in classrooms. We've also been able to score computers when we ask kids that, bring your own device, but that we have some just in case they need them.
You know the phone's in the parking lot and they're working it from their wrists, right?
Yeah, we haven't gotten to that challenge yet.
Red Sox.
Yeah. Yeah, I hate that too. Just for an update with the math program, the 7th grade is now in the 2nd year of the new math program. It's the Pearson and Vision Math. I've put in the budget for the 8th grade to get it, so that way we have a cohesive math program. It really has paid off. Just briefly talking about MCAS, Ms. Martell, 6th grade math, they did outstanding. Number 1 in the valley. But anyway, I didn't say that. The rest of the MCAS scores looked really good. And so I'm looking forward to seeing how our math scores progress because this year is the 2nd year of that program and next year will be the 3rd year. And it'll be nice to see, is the program working for our kids, plus what the elementary school is doing. We'll hopefully have some strong math students. Not that we didn't have them before, but, it's good to keep an eye on the prize. For professional development, this summer I was lucky that I stumbled upon Susie Pepper Rollins, who is an ASCD author. She wrote 2 books, Teaching in the Fast Lane and Learning in the Fast Lane, and she talks a lot about how instructional strategies that you can use in your classroom, really based on vocabulary, really strengthen kids' understanding because language is a big piece of, when you read something, you have to understand not only the big vocabulary words that are new, but also some of the incidental words that we take for granted that kids should know. So we did a 1-day workshop on that with the help of Lisa Hughes and Courtney Norton, and I think the teachers drank the Kool-Aid, and it's been a big impact in our school. When you walk around, you can see the word walls. You can see the standard walls where they make reference to, this is what we're learning today. And they get to see the big picture. So they can see student work posted that, hey, that's what that's supposed to look like. And as a matter of fact, 9 people decided that they wanted to read the book, not just based on my workshop. And so we got a book club going for this fall. 9 teachers out of the 25. So I thought that was pretty good. The 1 day we used for Atlas Rubicon, as well as the Blackstone Valley Curriculum Committee, the superintendent group brought in Bill Daggett into Bellingham. He's been working with that school district. I sent 8 teachers to see him and talking, Kristen, about the future and about what the future is in, and they came back with a little nerves of, oh my God, and a little bit of, I can do things different. So that was really great. And he really talks about those 20th century practices, how they came about, and shows you what it should look like in the future and how we really need to get on that bus and drive a little bit faster. Just an update, band, the thing that drives our schedule. Just to let you know, 57 students in 6th grade, 77 students in 7th and 8th grade. We have 16 students in chorus, 6th grade. We have 33 students in 7th and 8th grade chorus.
How many kids total in the school, Jerry?
So we have 183 kids in our music program out of roughly about 375. Just throwing it out there. So we make our schedule work, because we really, that's a huge number. Over 50% of our kids are involved in music, and we want to support that. Also, PTO had a welcome back TNO. It was heavily attended. I think we were like at 90% of the kids came. We also did a Halloween TNO. We've done one movie day, the Wonder Woman movie. That was pretty well attended. We have a Halloween movie coming up this Friday after school. Clubs, we've had 10 clubs so far going on this year. Makerspace, the Card Club, Box Top Club, the CSL Club, Foreign Language Club, Fantasy Football, Dungeons and Dragons, the Pet Kingdom, Board Game Club, Computer Clean Club, and we are starting up a new gardening club. Mrs. Ketty has beautified our campus. She ran into somebody that she met, and they were talking about all of the plants that's on her deck and how she needs to find a home for them from October until May. And Mrs. Ketty said, I have a beautiful school that would love to be beautified by all of your plants. So all of the plants in our lobbies and in our offices and in some of the classrooms are not donated but borrowed from this woman, and she started a club to have the kids actually learn about each of the plants and take care of them. She had 23 kids sign up.
Cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great.
I just attended on Saturday the Blackstone Valley Ed Foundation, the Tough STEM consortium that they did. I brought 10 kids with all of the other member schools in the valley. That was amazing. I was sad that I could only bring 10, but I have to follow the rules, unfortunately. VMS, just a report talking about, school, 25 kids, and they're doing really, really well. And we got red flagged on it. And all of a sudden now I'm going to be talking to this woman about being part of a case study about virtual middle school and what are we doing that our kids are so successful at it.
So red flagged in a good way.
Red flagged in it, well, in a good way for some people. I'm going to spend some time with this lady trying to explain to her why it works in Sutton, because, you can't put Captain Obvious in the room and say, because our kids are great and they're independent learners and they thrive on this.
What does red flag mean?
To me, it's a red flag of all the virtual middle school schools, we're the most outstanding school
So
that they have.
The scores the students were achieving were
The
high
grade-
enough that they questioned how it was happening, or
Nope.
you used more seats than you
Nope.
were allowed, or?
No, they just want to know what's going on in Sutton because your kids are so successful. What's happening? What are you doing so we can garner some information and give that to the other schools so that they can be successful?
Flagged for a follow-up.
Right.
And,
Yeah, not a red flag
Doing
like
right.
you're in danger of, just a red flag of, guess what, Jerry, you got to sit down and talk to this lady for a long time. Yeah. Also, we did the screen ages. The PTO from the elementary and the middle school showed this movie called Screen Ages that talked about kids and addiction to their screens, which was really well participated in, and really parents walked out of there, and I think they were all like, wow. And it is a wow factor when you think about the screen time and the kids and how that addiction plays and the chemical changes in their brains. It was an eye-opener, and an eye-opener for me as well.
We brought that up in the last meeting, had mentioned how well that was, and wished maybe a couple more people could have made it. Is there a link on the site, on the middle school site, to that? Because I know a great document was provided, and it was links to the materials for this.
I can put that back up.
That would be great, because I wish more people could have seen that. I thought it was very good, and to have Mr. Durgan there, ready to answer questions as well, was
Another
great.
email blast, just check it out
Okay.
if you haven't seen it yet.
Because that was excellent. Thank you.
Good. And lastly, just an update, the math grant that I wrote over the summer that had all of the math teachers and the special ed teachers and the high school math chairperson, I thought was a really well-received time that they used. And one of the things that Christine Gamble walked away with was, wow, we spend so much time on this certain topics and you do it already so well. I need to go communicate that back up to the high school and say, you don't have to do that. They already got it. And it went, I think it speaks to the teachers that they spent a lot of hours this summer to work together and build a nice curriculum for us. And lastly, here's the middle school news that I love, just in case you haven't gotten it. And Nancy, I printed it in black and white. So
Thank you. Saving color.
saving color, 10
Thank you,
cents a
Jerry.
page.
Glad you
It
brought
just
that, Mr.
highlights.
Goyette. So when
Thank you,
see
Jerry.
the
You're welcome. It just highlights
Coffee
everything.
machine budget over.
Yep.
Mr. Goyette is the
Jerry, you could double side.
I know. I haven't figured
small
that out yet.
steps.
And just again, this is not just me putting this together, this is the staff as well. So it's just, it's not just one person pushing the cart. We're all in this together in the middle school. And you can feel it and you can see it within those pages.
Jerry, got a quick question for you.
Yeah.
Bill Daggett, where is he out of?
You're going to see him at the conference. He's
Oh, he'll
speaking at-
be-
Yes,
Oh,
he's
okay.
outstanding.
So I can corner him. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
thank you.
He was great, by the way. He's really, when teachers are there and they get to see the mirror a little bit.
So he's dynamic and engaging.
He's very dynamic,
Spectacular.
and it makes people just definitely shake their head a little bit and say, "Okay, I need to do some
Yes.
changes, small changes."
Yeah, well,
So,
series of small changes.
yeah.
That's good. Sounds
Any
good.
other questions?
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ski club is almost
Thanks.
full. 35 more people.
Just 2 buses this year, right?
Just 2 buses. All right. Good night, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Jerry.
Budget Subcommittee. This was, Kristen and Bruce were starting to take a look, and I think this is really just meant to be updates where you're headed, an opportunity for the rest of the committee to have a sense of what's going on.
We did meet last week with Ted and Nancy. Budgets are in process. You're collecting all that information now. Teachers or principals are putting them together in department heads. We talked about perhaps a different way of reporting it as opposed to the mammoth binder that details the specific number of red pens and pink highlighters that are used. Rather going to more of a bucket and pail system where larger items are reported in bigger numbers, and you can break things down by school, but the level of detail with the number of pens and pencils, I think that's minutia, and I don't think we think that's minutia, and that we don't really need to get into that level of detail. If there's a budget of $10,000 for classroom expenses or classroom items per school, we have confidence that the principals of the schools can manage that without having to report specifically that number of red pens and pink highlighters that are purchased. The other part is to report the budget with a little bit of trending information the past couple of years to compare to the current, and then forecasting, and then forecasting for the next year, but also, as Kristen had mentioned earlier, think of where we want the school system to go in a larger, broader picture, whether it's a 3 or 5 year or 10-year vision, what we'd like to see the school be able to offer, and how to develop a budget to get to that. So.
Questions?
Sounds
That's
great.
kind of what FinCom had asked you for as well, right? They
Yes.
don't want to know about the pens.
Right.
Do you think that's something that you'll try to roll into this coming budget, or will this,
We'd like to.
We'd
We
like to,
gotta
yeah.
wait to see when Ted and Nancy have all their stuff done. We can meet again and talk about how that was, how to
How each
report that
bucket's
out.
filled, yeah.
But we'd also talk with Nate and Pete about, because I think it goes
Right,
hand in
it's
hand with
coming.
what you're
Yep, sure,
talking
yeah,
about there,
for
so.
sure.
But I think that we're, and again, it's just a couple years for me, and I didn't go through the very dark budget years that many of you did, but I mean, I have confidence in Ted and Nancy and the people who are running departments to say, here's your bucket of money. You're charged with spending it wisely and keeping track of it. Nancy has all the information on how many red pens, if you want to know. She can get that for you. But I think we're at the point now that things have stabilized a bit, that We can go to a Jerry Goyette and say, Jerry, here's your money to operate your school, and keep us informed with what's going on if there are any issues. But this is your pool.
From a budget development process, it's still ground up. So at one level, somebody is looking and
Somebody's
saying,
knowing-
looks
yeah,
like we're going to
absolutely.
want 50 red pens this year,
Yeah.
that rolls to. So this is really a reporting perspective. We still would budget each year from the ground up.
Right, absolutely.
Well, okay, I might have misunderstood a little bit.
Oh, okay.
I see this as you take and maybe put a list together of pencils, pens, markers, glue sticks, all that stuff, and say, just a list of general supplies that we get.
Right.
We look at the trend over the last 3 years and say, $5,000 in each building for the general stuff. And then, the right here, the student workbooks for the new math series, that's a very clear, this is what this is going to cost. But you get 17 pages per school of 7 blue markers. I'm not sure that, and the truth is, they basically do the same thing every year and kind of do it that way. Now, I think there needs to be some degree of accountability of that, but
But they should know what's going into that bucket. They should have a pretty good idea of, these are the things I'm gonna need moving forward. And if you've got supplies that are carried over from the previous year, then you've got to adjust. And that's, I thought, where, we were as far as, we're trusting them to know what the actual number is.
They're doing that to build the budget,
Yeah.
right? To tell you how much they
where are
need.
we? What's the inventory
Yeah,
look like?
yeah.
Have you gone in? I mean, the nice part about when you have new principals, they go in and go through and
Everything.
inventory, and then, although Mr. Goyette's been around the longest and he knows every single
It's-
pen
yeah.
that he has in his closet, and he doesn't allow me in, which is interesting. But again, I still think you have to have a lot of detail, but we know what we're going to spend, generally speaking. So that was kind of what I took on
Yeah, no,
our
it's
end.
ultimately, because there's the big picture, and then it's the trickle down, so each school has got a certain pot to work with, and they should know what's going into it, so if we need to know, we'll know. But I think ultimately, we need to know, are you within the budget for your school?
And we're thinking 3 basic reports: the general overview that this group is working on, and then a comparison, like a 3-year comparison of what the actual spending, and then just the budget, not every individual schools or any of those things, to give people a reasonable packet.
What about projections?
Just a 1-year focus, I think, is just to think out is all we need.
We have a 3-year projection on all salaries, which is the bulk, which is 78 to 80% of the budget.
And you
So
can
what I
also-
wonder is, accuracy-wise, can we get to 3 or 5 year projections on the budget?
We probably could, based on
You can
trends.
trend some things.
Yeah.
I mean, you always have the stuff that you don't know, the special ed, but you can
Yeah, that
you can
moving
trend
target, yeah.
transportation and utility costs, and we certainly know the salary portion of it. So
My impression is you would do it, you would get the budget done, get it settled, and then in between having settled that budget and starting the next one, is there a period of time that you start to say, what's a 3 or 5 year?
Yeah, it should
trend
always,
like
should always be forward-looking, based, again, on what you envision, what the school you want it to be, which comes along with DLT and school councils and all of that, so there's a lot that goes into that.
What I would say is that we've broken out the big picture of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 general broad categories. We've always done it that way, but we've kind of streamlined it. I think that might be a great way to look out and say, you can probably project up from those
Yeah.
5 categories the next 3 years.
Right.
I'm not suggesting you would project blue pen use over 5
Right, but those
years.
broad categories,
But
yes.
those broad categories, and having a conversation that says, listen, we've settled 19. However, 20, 21, 22, not only do you have salaries, here are other things. And if you want to start to make choices about whether you're bringing on staff or whether you can get a slice seater, maybe those are too small, but just in the broad categories,
But you're right, you're
my impression is
butchering-
we've always limped a little bit when somebody said, how did you not know this was coming?
Absolutely, and that's been one of my big things, is just knowing, you gotta plan a little bit ahead, because if you don't know where you're going, you're going blind.
I think we're pretty good with that,
Little
though.
steps. I know, but I still think, having a clear plan, if, we're looking to move forward with, like you said, the more maintenance stuff for our fields. How are we gonna get there? Is it, adding one this year and maybe adding another the next year? How are we getting where we're going?
Excuse me.
Communications subcommittee.
All right, so a lot of the things were just said that we're striving for, but we're striving to, in addition to a presentation that, eventually it'll be the bulk of what gets presented to FinCom, we also wanted to make something that's more consumable for the general public. As it was stated, the budget book. We're always going to have that.
Yeah.
But you hand that to most people, even sometimes people in the know,
Us, yeah.
and it is daunting. So what we want to do is really provide something that's, quite consumable and slightly more enjoyable to read. I would say, based upon what you were just talking about, projections, we do a pretty good job of projecting things. One of the things that I still want to advocate for, and we've said it a couple times, is we've had FinCom in the past tell us, where do you want to be? What are some of the things you want to invest? And that's one of the things, and I realize on the tail of the, lively discussion tonight about how do we fit in the classes, I'd love to see something where even if we put it on there, budget in something where it's equity line of, we want some kitchen appliances.
Yeah,
and maybe try a
absolutely.
home ec class or engineering or something like that, at least to put it on the radar to say, here's what we want. We know, we have an idea what the salaries are. We have an idea of where operational costs are trending. But on top of that, hey, here's some of the investments we'd like to make. So I'd like to do that without making this too lengthy. We do want to try to have something for the public that is an easy read, not a ton of pages. It might be something that ends up having a large appendix to it that explains further details, but the difference will be it should be a high-level view of the budget, where the money comes in, where the money's going out, and if you want details, everybody's welcome to the budget book as long as you print it yourself. And there you go. So we have met. Nancy and Ted have provided a great first shot of it. We're going to have another meeting, try to go through, refine it a bit, and our hope is to really try to present something in the first meeting in November that you guys can look at and kind of say, this is the template we want to shoot for. If we get it right, that can be kind of what we go with for the next
Right.
foreseeable future.
Right.
And make it a little bit easier. We just need the numbers, we plug it in, great.
Right, and I think it's important to have the goals, because if you've got goals but you have no plan, I don't know, to me, that's useless. You gotta figure out how you're getting there from point A to point B.
Yep.
So I think it's kind of like, I see it as almost like the capital plan, in year, whatever, in 2020, we're replacing this, we're doing this, we're doing that. That's kind of what I see us doing. In 2020, we hope to have this, we'd like to see this. How are we gonna get there? Well, this year we need to do this, next year we've got this. So it's a stepwise progression, so it's not just thrown at you, because it has to be well thought out.
Yep, and again, based on the discussion tonight, I don't know where further review of that will go, but we've spent so many years trying to be lean, and we want to work with the town, not increase the cost of things, but at the same time, we could be heading somewhere where, we do realize areas that we need to invest. It might be headcount, we'll see. So
Seems like-
it is good to have the projections.
It seems like the projection side of that communication is be an effective tool at driving conversations. Right?
Yep.
I think we very often talk about, I'd like to talk about things that really matter, and that might help drive that.
Yep. So again, looking to create a very simplified, consumable packet that can be shared, hopefully not too many pages, and should give everybody a good
Yeah,
understanding.
something that if someone asks about it, I don't know how often it comes up, but if someone says, where does this money come from, or how does this work, and what does this stand for, it's something you can forward, email, send, and they can navigate through it themselves without it being too difficult.
Yep. That's what we had. Thanks.
One more. Superintendent's update.
Yes. So I just want to make the committee aware that when we, remember back 3 years ago, we went to the new math series at the elementary school, and we were able to get the capital fund to pay for that, which was fantastic. But what we discovered in the process was all of the textbook companies were scrambling to get a product out that aligned with the new frameworks. And so now, over the last 3 years, they've refined the product. So Miss Merriam and Mrs. Harrison were able to negotiate, and so I just want to make you aware that in the next bill schedule, you're going to see, when we have the money for it, we're going to be able to get all the student workbooks, the updated student workbooks for the Early Learning Center, 3 packages of cards, flashcards for the school, and all of the curriculum kits for the cost of just the workbooks. So she was able to negotiate with them and say, listen, you guys got us to buy your product, and then 3 years later, it's saying, well, we revised it, and it's a more aligned product. So I want to thank Miss Merriam for doing that and getting that, so you'll see that coming through. The other reason why I want to do this right now is that we've invested in Atlas Rubicon, we've invested in professional development, so I want them to have the latest materials so that they can build that curriculum that will be the curriculum. And remember, a textbook is just kind of like the foundation of your curriculum. So you want to have that and then build off of that curriculum. So I just want to make you aware of that when you see that in the bill schedule.
And there's a budget line for that, or
Correct.
should we be aware?
There is a budget line for that. On Sunday, I'm going to do a NEASC visit. I've mentioned this before. 9:30 in the morning, I'm going to be in Sturbridge, and then we're heading over to David Prouty High School in Spencer. I volunteered to do this because I wanted to go through the process prior to us going through the process, so I know what I was getting myself into. And I think it's great for me to go and see another high school and see what other high schools are offering compared to our high school. So I think it's well worth my time. It's Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then on Thursday and Friday, 3 of us are going down to the MASC, MASS conference. I heard Bill Dackett speak last year. He's amazing, but he's frightening at the same time when you talk about the futuristic things that are happening in medicine and nanotechnology. What the future holds for us can be frightening. I also have here, and I'm not sure about the procedures on these types of items. This is an MOU for the STA contract, and all it is, right now, teachers are paid for the days they work. So a teacher gets paid for 180 days. They don't get vacations or anything. And they get paid every 2 weeks. But then in June, they get 5 checks all at once, and they don't get paid through the summer. So this will allow teachers to choose. They can either get 5 checks in June to cover the summer, or they can spread their checks and get paid throughout the summer. So I don't know.
I thought we already had that.
Yeah.
No, they've
Why
all.
would- That seems, it's archaic, okay.
So part of it is there's an MOU that's related to the contract, and it will require my signature. So I said, listen, the contract is something that we vote on. Here's an MOU that is signed to it. I just want to make sure everybody's aware. And so if we're not voting on it and we aren't
So
scheduled to
how will
vote.
this change closing out
Sorry,
at
but
the end of the?
unless there's an objection, I'm going to sign that MOU with that agreement.
That's fine. I just had a question of how does that impact reporting for the end of the year?
We accrue for it, so.
Yeah, so then-
It's a journal
so then
entry
there's
at the
no-
end of the year. I spoke to the town accountant.
That
he
just
signs
seems
it.
weird that we've never offered it, so, sorry.
It's obviously easier from the business office to pay them all in June, but, I could
So
just
does-
imagine myself at 30 years old with 3 children, just getting by and trying to drag things out, so.
Oh, sorry. Are we able to do direct deposit?
Yeah, that's
for
what I
them?
was just
It's
wondering.
all, it's all.
All right, good.
It's
All
all,
right.
yeah.
All our staff are direct deposit. We have
Great.
no live check. So we'll have an occasional live check, but it's all direct deposit.
Does the other union have that same option?
No, because they don't get paid like that. Oh, no, I take it back. We're looking at, so they came to us and there are some IAs that work 183 days, and we're looking at, can we somehow spread their pay out to do it similar? But right now, they're paid, they work
As is.
30 hours, they get paid 30 hours. It's very difficult to, we've tried. Did we get it in with anybody?
Yeah, we have about 10 people.
We have 10 people that we're trying this with right now to see if it's functional.
But as you
with
said, they're
sal-
paid hourly
Yeah,
versus salary, right?
And the salaries are far easier to pop into a system and have a check generated,
Yeah.
a deposit every 2 weeks.
But I think it's, if we can do it for an IA, an instructional assistant, I think it benefits them more so that, because they'll get to some checks, they get no money because of their,
I get it, and you guys are gonna pay people and it's
Yeah.
appropriate. I just wanted to make sure that there's an MOU
Oh, yeah,
that's
no,
tied to a
that's,
contract, so we're all
that's
aware.
fine. No, I'm-
Excellent. What else have you got?
there was a question about the tablets, and so I guess I just needed to be more. We have a new librarian, and she's doing a great job, and she's very thorough. So when she presented that document, anything that leaves the library, no matter where it goes, she put on this list. So all of those tablets, they're still in existence in our school district. They were repaired. There was 7 of them. They were repaired, and they're split between the middle and high school. So she was just saying in that report, they're no longer in the
That they
library.
just
She no
come out.
longer owns them. So I just want to be clear about what that was.
And Diane sent an email, or we got an update.
Yeah.
email.
Oh, you did? Okay, all right.
It's good to get it, so others who might have been curious, but
And then finally, I just received an email this morning that Will Edwards is the student ambassador for Project 351. Will has been, he's an 8th grader. This is an 8th grade program statewide where there are, and you probably all know about it now if you've been on the committee, but they pick one student advisor from the 351 cities and towns. They do great work. It's a great program. So Will's been a member of the student council since 6th grade, very active, and so he was chosen by the middle school to do that.
what was the name?
It's Project 351.
Will's,
Will Edwards.
Will Edwards. I'm just
Willem
thinking we're gonna
Edwards.
see William Edwards in another 3 or 4 years.
You're going to see him. I can guarantee you that.
You can see him right in the middle school packet, his picture's in there.
And that's all I have. I don't know if anybody has anything for me.
New business?
Question, we're coming up on basketball season, and I was, somebody asked me this question. Our kids are charged an athletic fee to play a sport, and there are a couple sports that we have, basketball and I believe football, where we charge admission. And the parents, the parent of a student asked, don't you think that it's being taxed twice for me to pay for my kid to play a sport, and then I have to pay to go watch my student play a sport? And we have other sports where parents are not charged admission to watch their kids play. I thought about it and I said, no, that's a very good point. I don't think it's a lot of money, but could we set up some type of system where parents of students who play, well, we're coming up on basketball season, football is just about done, but maybe going forward where parents could get a pass to come in to the game without having to pay, at least in Sutton, to watch their kids play sports where they've already paid for them to be on the team. I don't think it's a lot of money. We charge $5 admission, but this person brought up a very valid point, so.
So I think that this would be something that this committee has to take up.
We were really hoping to hang it on.
Well, I mean, you can hang it on me, that's fine. I don't have a problem hanging on me, but you just need to give me permission to hang it on me.
Good news, we've got another meeting coming up first Monday in November.
Yep.
Can you, let's work on a motion that we can vote on. It gives you a couple of days to think about.
I
is it
just wanna
possible to
think
make that
through
work, How
about-
to do that.
What are the ramifications,
Yeah.
is this going to create some other thing on the other side? And we'll bring that at,
And everybody's got fair warning if you made it to the end of the show. right, the next school committee meeting, we'll talk about and potentially vote on that option.
All right.
Others?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Somebody's got to second that one.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
5-0.